immigrant constituents have lived in our community for years and work incredibly hard so that they can put down roots, much as my parents did when I was a child. So will the Minister acknowledge the contributions of immigrant families who enrich towns like mine when making policy about settlement periods?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Absolutely, across the board, we recognise the contribution from migrant communities and specifically the Hong Kong community. We are listening to their views about the route to settlement and, of course, will continue to do so.
Good evening, Moss.
Mr. Speaker, the case for legal migration, the case for those genuinely seeking asylum is undermined by evidence that in Station Road in my constituency, businesses are exploiting migrants to carry out illegal trading, and businesses locally are shocked and frustrated that when police are raiding those premises, they remain open and continue trading. Will the government consider bringing forward legislation to provide for immediate closure of illegally trading shops?
The honourable member for his question. Mr. Speaker, this is something we take extremely seriously in the Home Office. It's something that's out of control after the previous government left us with a broken system. That's why in just over a year and a half we've increased arrests by 50% and visits by 63%. That's the highest in British history and will continue on that route.
Murray. Home Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recognise the huge pressure that asylum hotels have placed on communities. This government is committed to exiting asylum hotels by the end of the Parliament. We have already halved the number of hotels in use since the peak under the Conservative Party, but I would like to go faster, which is why I am exploring the use of large sites, including military sites.
Chris Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I draw the House's attention to my declaration of interest. I thank the Home Secretary for that response. The Home Affairs Select Committee report on asylum accommodation shows private companies have made millions from the taxpayer, while communities and asylum seekers have suffered. What is the Home Secretary doing to address this appalling profiteering the Tories allowed in the disastrous asylum contracts? And will she trigger the break clause next year?
Thank my honourable friend for his question. So far, the amount that has been recouped by this government is £74 million, of which £46 million is excess profit. The remainder is service charges or service credits and VAT. We are rapidly reviewing the contracts that we inherited, including the break clause, to ensure that they are providing value for money for taxpayers, and I will keep this matter under review and update the House in due course.
Nick Timothy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The last Home Secretary said we should judge the success of the government in smashing the gangs by whether the number of channel crossings falls. By which date should we judge the government in whether it's been successful, and if the Home Secretary fails, will she resign?
Well, we should already recognise that the action on law enforcement, and particularly the cooperation with our colleagues in France and Germany, has led to the confiscation of kit that was being used by organised immigration crime gangs, and has led to 20,000 illegal crossings from taking place. We are going to set out later on today a full suite of measures designed to decrease the number of arrivals across the Channel, and I, unlike many in his party, take my responsibilities very seriously, and I'm very happy to be held to account by the British public.
Ewan Steinbach.
The government have already acted to fix the unworkable mess the Tories left the asylum system in. 116% increased the processing in 1 year, bringing down the backlog, securing refugee status for those fleeing persecution and removing those with no right to be here. But communities such as Falkirk must see the benefit of this difference in approach. What steps will the Home Secretary be taking to guarantee Tory-created asylum hotels will be closed equitably across the nations of the United Kingdom?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for that question. We are working across government with ministers on closing every hotel as soon as possible and by the end of this Parliament. As we've all seen, it's a complex process, must be delivered through a controlled and managed and orderly programme of work. We don't want to be in a situation where, without an alternative ready, we start exiting hotels before it is time to do so. But I can assure him we will take a balanced and evidence-based approach towards the decision-making that we will make here on the locations that we will use and how we will exit hotels, and I look forward to talking to him in more detail about these plans in due course.
Pete Wishaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The
government is currently spending some £2.1 billion on hotels, and it isn't working, and it doesn't have to be this way. PCS, and together with refugees, have shown that a humane asylum system that expedites asylum hearings and supports employment could reduce asylum costs by 40%. Will she at least look at the evidence and concede that she doesn't always have to try and outdo the honourable member for Clacton?
What I would say to the honourable gentleman is that what I'm interested in is recognising the extent of the problems that this government has inherited and coming up with proper solutions to those problems. For me, this is not about party politics or individual politicians. It's a moral mission to fix a broken system that is unfair, costing the country far too much money and putting huge pressure on communities. So I would say to him, engage with the detail of the proposal rather than playing party politics himself.
We come to topical Seamus Logan.
Mr. Speaker.
Take care, Mark.
Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to start with some very good news indeed. One of the heroes of the Huntingdon attack, Samir Zitouni, the member of the train's crew who risked his own life to save others, has been discharged from hospital. There is a long road ahead of him now, and his family have asked for privacy. But I'm sure the whole House joins me in wishing him the swiftest and fullest recovery possible. Since the last Home Office oral questions, I have made a number of significant announcements. A review of police protest powers was launched last weekend, and I'm pleased to say that the former Director of Public Prosecutions, Lord Ken MacDonald, will lead it. Last week, we announced that police and crime commissioners will be abolished. The introduction of police and crime commissioners by the last government was a failed experiment. I will introduce new reforms so police are accountable to their mayoralties or local councils. The savings from this will fund more neighbourhood policing on the beat across the country, fighting crime and protecting our communities. I would like to recognise the efforts of all current and former police and crime commissioners and thank them because they served their communities with honour and will continue to do so until they have completed their current
Order. It's far too long an introduction because I'm still going to get people in. Please, we've got to shorten it down. Seamus Logan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Muscatelli report commissioned by the Labour Party in Scotland recommended that the Scottish Government push for a bespoke immigration approach that tackles the unique issues faced in Scotland and its economy. And while the leader of the Labour Party in Scotland, Anna Sauer, may be a bit confused about what is devolved and reserved, I'm sure the Secretary of State is not. Will the Secretary of State meet with me to discuss this report further to deliver a win for the Scottish economy and fulfil one of the manifesto commitments of the Labour Party in Scotland?
Not, because immigration is a reserved matter, and to try to devolve this matter would create perverse pull factors all across the United Kingdom, which would be deeply inappropriate.
Elaborate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The data centre in Camas in my constituency, £10 billion investment, together with other subsea interconnectors, for example. It looks as if my constituency is being a plug-in centre for critical national infrastructure. With that in mind, can the Minister give me some advice as to whether or not terrorism is being looked at as a serious issue because of the investment in what's happening in patches like mine in Camas?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman raises an important point, and I can say to him that the assessment of the terrorist threat to the UK is made independently by JTAC. Government partners, including JTAC, MPSA and counter-terrorism police, work closely with industry to ensure the latest threat picture is appropriately responded to by owners of CNI. I would, of course, be happy to discuss it further with my honourable friend.
And Home Secretary Christopher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last October, a Sudanese small boat illegal immigrant murdered 27-year-old Rhiannon White by stabbing her 23 times with a screwdriver. In September, an illegal immigrant from Egypt was jailed for brutally raping a young woman in Hyde Park. And just last week, an Iranian and 2 Egyptian small boat illegal immigrants were committed for trial for the rape of a 33-year-old woman on Brighton Beach. How many more murders and rapes must there be before the Home Secretary agrees to the immediate deportation of all illegal immigrants within a week of arrival?
The last case is sub judice, so please be careful on the answer. Thank you. Minister.
For that clarification, Mr. Speaker, we are totally clear. Those who commit crimes should not get settlement or citizenship in this country. Those who commit crimes should be removed. That's why we've reached removals at their highest levels for a decade. There is much more we can do in this space, and that's why the Home Secretary is making the statement she's going to make later.
Colin.
Speaker, in Staffordshire there are proposals to limit the hours of PCSOs in the evening. I welcome the named police officers that are returning to my constituency, but will she ensure that the neighbourhood policing guarantee will mean more PCSOs on our streets, not less?
My honourable friend is right to raise this. We will make sure that there are more neighbourhood officers on our streets, 3,000 more by next April. But of course, PCSOs have a really vital role to play, and I'm a big fan, and I want to encourage all forces to have more.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Max Wilkinson.
Mr. Speaker, ahead of the budget next week, the Labour Chancellor departed from years of silence on the matter by admitting that Brexit has been a disaster for our economy. Will the Labour Home Secretary now follow the Chancellor's lead by admitting that Brexit has also caused significant harm to this country's ability to maintain order in our immigration and asylum system?
I am slightly reticent, Mr. Speaker, to enter into the Brexit theory of everything with the honourable gentleman. The reality is we have the settlement we have. The British people rightly want to understand why asylum numbers are falling across Europe but increasing in the UK. That's why we're taking the actions we're proposing to take, and he won't have to wait much longer to hear the detail of them.
Boris Curtis.
Mr. Speaker, what steps is the Home Secretary taking to counter the rise of extremist narratives, whether domestic or foreign-backed, that seek to undermine our democratic processes?
Mr. Speaker, everyone deserves to feel safe and be able to participate fully in public and political life, free from the threat of violence or exclusion driven by hateful prejudice. We will persist in our efforts to challenge extremist narratives, disrupt the activity of radicalising groups, and directly tackle the causes of radicalisation. Alongside our work to tackle extremism, the Defending Democracy Task Force is driving forward a whole-of-government response to the full range of threats we face to our democracy.
Christine Jardine.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I've been contacted by constituents concerned that a group calling itself Justice for Innocent Men Scotland is allegedly harassing victims of sexual violence by undermining their anonymity. So can the Minister tell me what the UK Government is going to do to protect women across the UK from this sort of targeting and harassment?
I thank the Honourable Lady for raising this case with me, and I'd be more happy to look into it in more detail, but it is a fundamental principle that victims of sexual violence are entitled by law to anonymity, and to breach that anonymity is it is a crime. And so I would be very interested to hear from her and see how we can make sure that this isn't happening.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Home Secretary will be aware of the existing asset recovery incentivisation scheme, which uses seized criminal assets to fund enforcement agencies in their work tackling economic crime. There are, however, concerns around the lumpy nature of the funding model, which can see wild variations in financial support year in, year out for the likes of the CPS, local police forces and the SFO. Will the Minister therefore meet with me to discuss the merits of introducing a ring-fence, multi-year funding pot for law enforcement agencies tackling economic crime?
Mr. Speaker, I can say to my honourable friend that the Department is absolutely committed to reinvesting criminal proceeds into asset recovery and related economic crime. 24-25, 174 million supported law enforcement, including through the ARIS top slice, a multi-year fund that's ring-fenced for core and innovative capabilities. We are reviewing ARIS with stakeholders to improve stability and effectiveness. I know that my honourable friend is engaging with the noble Lord Flint, but I'd be very happy to discuss it with him further.
Clive Jones.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. In Wokingham, many businesses have created their own text warning system to notify each other when known shoplifters are about in the town. Preventing crime should not be their priority. Selling their product should be their priority. Will the Government commit to reversing Conservative cuts to police officer numbers by increasing the number of police officers on the beat to tackle crime, ease residents' concern and protect high street businesses?
The honourable gentleman points to a really awful crime that was very much overlooked by the previous government. We are changing the system where this £200 rule, where crimes wouldn't be investigated if they were less than 200, will be scrapped. We're bringing in the new offence, which my honourable friend championed for in opposition of assaults against shop workers. This needs a really targeted response. We know that a lot of local police are working really closely with the co-op group, with others, to make sure we target the prolific offenders who are responsible for the vast amount of this crime.
Andy MacDonald.
Mr. Speaker, the government has tabled an amendment to the Crime and Policing Bill, giving sweeping powers to impose conditions on public protests based on cumulative disruption. Can the Minister set out in the House what's meant in that amendment by serious disruption to a community, and how will this be determined or measured, and indeed subject to democratic scrutiny?
It will probably take longer than the answer of a topical question, but I'm very happy to speak to my honourable friend about this. The definition of serious disruption is not changing, but this is the conditions on which a police force can put conditions on a protest, not banning a protest, but very happy to have more conversations with him.
Rupert Lowe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Home Secretary agree that if a migrant, legal or illegal, can't speak English, claims benefits, lives in social housing, refuses to work, rejects integration, commits crime, is a drain on our society, or even actively hates Britain and wishes to do us harm, that they should be removed from our country, regardless of how many millions of deportations that will inevitably result in?
I'm sad that the honourable gentleman has a different characterisation to the one I have from my own community about those who seek refuge in this country, because that isn't my experience. We are clear that if individuals commit crime, there must of course be consequences for that, including their removal from this country. But as I say, the honourable gentleman won't have to wait much longer to hear what the Home Secretary has to say, but I can't recognise his characterisation.
Boris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a lifelong political activist and trades unionist, I value free speech and the right to protest. Now, having lived through the miners' strike, I know what it means when the state turns against working people and disregards their rights. So I'm deeply concerned that the proposed amendments to the Crime and Policing Bill will allow police to prohibit marches, demonstrations and even picket lines simply because another is taking place in the same area. Can the Minister guarantee that this House will have sufficient time to debate and vote on these amendments?
Can I thank my honourable friend? Just to be really clear, this isn't about stopping marches, it's about conditions, so the length of time, the geography of them, and of course the right to protest is one that we on this side of the House will always champion.
Bradley Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With the government looking to impose visa sanctions to tackle illegal migration, why did they vote against such measures as part of the Border Security Bill? And if Labour MPs won't swallow these plans, what will she do as a backup?
Well, the honourable gentleman is in so many ways ahead of his time. In fact, no, I may well be the first person to accuse him of that. But he will have those opportunities to hear from the Home Secretary as to our plans with regards to visa sanctions. He just has to wait a little bit longer.
Brenda Jess.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Crimes committed by grooming gangs are amongst the most horrific imaginable, with their devastating impact felt by the victims for the rest of their lives. So, does the Minister agree that the national inquiry into grooming gangs should be implemented without delay, the victims are kept at the heart of our response, and their voices and experiences lead the inquiry so that some justice can finally be delivered for those impacted?
I thank my honourable friend, and of course I agree entirely with him, and we are working urgently to establish the inquiry, and Baroness Casey is supporting this work, and she and I met with some of those that he is talking about very recently, and I look forward to updating the House.
Peter Bedford.
The Home Office have requested transitional accommodation for asylum claimants following the closure of Garrett's Hay, my constituency. However, neither Leicestershire County Council nor Charnwood Borough Council have been consulted or have received any additional funding for this extra burden. Why have these councils been bypassed, and will they get the funding that they need?
All local authorities get an extra payment of £1,200 when someone in the supported estate ends up in their local authority. So I can't quite understand the characterisation there. If I'm wrong on that point, I would be keen to meet with the honourable gentleman to understand it, because we appreciate that there is an impact on local communities. We want to make sure that people can live there as smoothly as possible, and we want to get that right.
Jonathan Brash.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hartlepool Police do a magnificent job, but like the rest of the Cleveland Force area, they are hamstrung by a funding formula that is broken. The Victims' Core Grant sees £7 per crime in my constituency, and down the road in North Yorkshire, £19 per crime. This is unfair and unjust. Can the Minister please commit to fixing this fundamental unfairness?
My honourable friend's right that for many years the opposition wanted to look at police funding formula and never did. The Home Secretary will be bringing forward our police reform white paper, which will set the context within which we will look at future funding, but the allocations for this year are being looked at as we speak, and I hear the honourable gentleman.
Mary Wilson.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. The Secretary of State will be aware that the Met Police have recently proposed to close or scale back the hours of operation of a number of police front counters across London. Some of these plans were recently scaled back, apparently in response to public feedback, but the Twickenham police front counter is still earmarked for closure, with only 15 people invited to an online meeting for that feedback. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that the Mayor of London and the Met Police have a duty to do a full public consultation on these plans?
The Honourable Lady is right, there was a consultation. There are 7 fewer station front counters that are now going to be closed than were, but she is right that Twickenham is not one of those. I think we need to judge the police in London on their outcomes and the work that Sadiq Khan has done, with the lowest number of murders since record Brigand. Fraser Nelson, that well-known socialist, writing just this week, look past the headlines, London is not a bad place to be, the city's winning the battle over violent crime.
David.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, last month across my constituency there was an increase in knife crime, and this wasn't necessarily carried out by younger people but by older people, and I know this is an area where the government is determined to crack down on knife crime. Can the government therefore say what more they are doing in this area to tackle knife crime?
Can I thank my honourable friend? Of course, nationally we've taken 60,000 knives off the streets, and knife murders are down 18% and knife crime is down 5%. But of course, every single offence is one too many, and we will keep pushing both in terms of the policing response, but crucially the prevention response, so that we can work with our young people to stop them getting involved in crime in the first place.
Julian Lewis.
It's often reported that a high proportion of people who enter the country illegally do so without any reliable identifying documentation. Can any minister say in percentage terms roughly what the proportions are of who has and who has not documentation amongst illegal immigration?
I'll have to follow in writing with the specific percentages to the right honourable gentleman, but I would want to give him and the House assurance that at that front door, we are taking full biometric checks, we are checking them against European databases as well as our own databases to make sure we know who's here, and if there is any offending history, what that history is.
Callum Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Returning to rural crime, I wanted to take the opportunity to pay tribute to the work that the Thames Valley Police Rural Crime Task Force is providing rural communities and farmers in the Buckingham and Bletchley constituency. With regards to the national rural crime strategy itself, can the Minister set out some more detail about how it will complement the work that's already been done by local forces, and whether that strategy will be complemented by a long-term funding model?
I am going to see Thames Valley Police on this exact subject very shortly, and will let him know, so perhaps he can come with me. Of course, the NPCC crime strategy will build on the work that's already been done in Thames Valley.
Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the major pull factors for illegal migrants crossing the Channel is the fact that they can quite easily get a job. So does the Home Secretary still support an amnesty for all undocumented workers?
That's not the position of the government. We are resolute in our attempts to tackle illegal working, which do act as a pull factor to this country. I would encourage colleagues, we have the Borders Bill returning to us on Wednesday. That, of course, contains really important provisions around the loopholes in the gig economy that can allow for substitution, that allows that space for illegal working. If we want to stop that, we should get that bill moving as quickly as we can.
Lincoln Jock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I understand that the Permanent Secretary at the Home Office has recently appointed a single official, senior official, responsible for asylum hotels. Please could the Home Secretary use her good offices to encourage that official to come to the Stanwell Hotel in my Spelthorne constituency, so that they can see for themselves how inappropriate it is in the context of the village there, and prioritise it for closure.
Well, the honourable gentleman and I have had this conversation about Stanwell before, and he presses it with his characteristic vigour. I will say to him and his community, we have committed to closing these hotels in this Parliament. They won't be open a day longer than they have to be. When we are closing hotels, there will be a clear criteria as to why they were chosen, and he makes a lot of very good suggestions as to what grounds might be used.
Adam.
Okay, in recent years, there's been a real increase in racist attacks in this country, including on NHS staff, who have seen a rise of 55%. Also, very recently, 2 Sikh women were just not racially abused, they were also sexually abused. Does the Secretary of State fear that implementing asylum policies like those in Denmark will further exacerbate the situation and embolden those that will create hate amongst our streets?
Well, my honourable friend, the Police Minister, met with a delegation of Sikh colleagues on that very, very important case recently. On the broader point with regards to Denmark, it is right that given the challenges we have in this country, we seek to draw on the best from around Europe and around the world in our policies. And I say to the honourable gentleman, he won't have to wait much longer to see the fruits of that.
For the message, Mr.
Speaker, last week the Policing Minister told me the funding allocation will be made in the usual way before the end of the year. There is more money going into policing this year, and we will ensure that it is being given where it is needed. So can the Minister clarify for my constituents that irrespective of more money going into policing, the Government is going to update the police allocation formula this year that will give Cambridgeshire its fair share, because the neighbourhood policing guarantee means nothing if our local police forces are underfunded compared to their neighbouring forces?
I wouldn't say that the neighbourhood guarantee with an extra £200 million means nothing. It means quite a substantial amount for all our communities across England and Wales, and the allocations will be decided in the usual way this year.
Wendy Chamberlain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a former police officer, I've policed protests and I know how important they are. But on the issue of cumulative disruption, can the Minister set out for the House what evidence she has gathered to demonstrate that when a protest is deemed safe as a one-off, it would become a public safety risk if it was repeated over time?
The Honourable Lady is aware of these issues, and she's aware of the complex relationship between with policing as to how you manage to police what can sometimes be very disruptive and very upsetting protests, and we have to get that balance right. That's what we're trying to do, and I'm very happy to have more conversations with her about it.
Question, Joshua Runs.
Shops in Maidenhead Town Centre tell me how pleased they are to see neighbourhood police officers doing their regular patrols, but those shops outside of the town centre don't see those patrols as regularly and struggle with shoplifting more as a result. Can the Minister tell me what she's doing to try and tackle that so we have more neighbourhood police in the actual communities, not just in our town centres?
Of course, he speaks to a challenge that policing have in terms of their resources, and what we're trying to do through the White Paper and the Reform Programme is to make sure that our police officers are able to spend all their time doing the things that we want them to be doing, not bureaucracy, not police staff jobs, not behind a counter, but out in our communities fighting crime.
Let the front bench change over.